made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes and to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Transact Card, Align Life, Neuro Infinity, Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, and the IFCO. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 509 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Kristina Rowland. And if you want to hear a story about automation and the new delegation from scale to profit, stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. Today's going to be marketing. So I would say get your pen and paper out, your pencil and paper out, and start taking some notes today. Because I think we're going to say a couple things during this episode that are going to inspire you to take your chiropractic practice to the next level with brand recognition and creating a movement for your chiropractic profession and for your office. Today is episode 509. We have Kristina Rowland coming in. Really excited for this episode. We've been social on social for quite some time now, and it's been really cool to see her develop her personal brand and to be able to help more people understand marketing, but from a perspective of taking people on a journey, I would say. So before we jump into this episode, I just want to let people know the big why. Why do we do what we do over here at Chiro Hustle? Well, first and foremost, it's the First Amendment. I think that that's really important to us, and it's really important with chiropractic. So freedom of speech is so vital to the future of our nation. So we definitely put our flag post down and say that we protect freedom of speech with our show, because I've never censored anyone. We also believe in medical freedom and family health freedom. And if people are having challenges with that, you have a right to say what does and doesn't come into your household and to your family. So that's really important. And chiropractic has been supporting that for like 127 years. So if people didn't know, that chiropractic is 127 years young as a profession. And BJ Palmer was the developer of the profession. And his last words were protect the sacred trust. Mm-hmm. So that's what we do with our show too, is we do protect the sacred trust. So if you don't know what that means, go to your favorite search engine and look for BJ Palmer's last words, look for the sacred trust, and you'll know a whole lot more about chiropractic than what you previously did. And just to let everybody know, cat out of the bag, BJ Palmer was a master marketer. He started the first radio station called WOC that had the largest audience from the Mississippi River Valley east to west. And it stood for Wonders of Chiropractic was the call letters, or World of Chiropractic. So he was one of the innovators in radio. So he didn't make all of his money off of chiropractic. He made all of his money off of advertising and radio and media. So that's a little takeaway for people about chiropractic there. But as the journey continues, we do support subluxation-based chiropractic, and we do believe in innate intelligence and universal intelligence, and that when man or woman, the physical gets adjusted, it connects them to man or woman, the spiritual. And I think that that's a really important thing because it's very philosophical, and chiropractic is a healing art. So it's important for us to have an opener like this and mention some of these things, because a lot of people that are going to be in your audience might not have ever heard anything that I just ever said. So we're cross-pollinating our message into your audience.
Absolutely. And while the history isn't something that they've heard a lot, I am a huge advocate. Well, my personal belief is that the metaphysical and the physical are, like, science and metaphysics are the same words, just different font. And so my audience is going to be very familiar with universal laws, energetics, all of this kind of stuff. And I'm I'm no like closet person when it comes to this is how I heal my own body. This is how I take care of my own body is through functional medicine, chiropractic, massage therapy, energy work, all of these kind of things. And I talk about that with my audience on a regular basis, which is why I think it's so, aligned that we ended up having this conversation today.
Yeah, one of the things I think is an important takeaway for people is innate intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
It's an inborn intelligence inside of all of us. We have it. Like right now, if I were to cut my finger, I don't have to look at my finger and tell it to heal. It's going to heal on its own because of the innate intelligence inside of my body that's organized to take care of it. So
Mm-hmm.
if somebody gets adjusted and, we take a misalignment out of the spine and we correct that, now it's the same thing. You don't have to look at that body and tell it to heal. It heals naturally because there's no more interference and the body's back in alignment with proper nerve flow. So I think that's really fun, because I don't know like the aptitude of most people, but I usually have like a chiropractic facing like conversation with most people that are into the chiropractic profession, doctors, their patients, their friends, their family. Like it's really awesome to be able to share some of these chiropractic truths and principles with you.
Yeah, that's great. And it's so funny because I think we have a very similar approach to what we do. I talk about alignment, being whole, being authentic, being the most vibrant version of yourself, like all of these different things. And I think it just comes down to our values are very similar, our values are very aligned, and what we believe and understand to be true. Whether we're right or wrong, it's like we still fall into the same camp of this is what we believe in and we're willing to stick to it.
Yeah, a lot of times I tell people I'll die on the hill. I'll die on the hill for the message of what we do for freedom, for medical freedom, for family health freedom, for freedom of speech. I think that those are righteous causes, and if I can ever impress anybody to like stand up for themselves, that's a big reason why we do this, is to empower people to know that they do have a choice.
Well, it's the autonomy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does tie in to innate intelligence, is also this innate autonomy that everybody values. You don't have to tell people that they don't like being bossed around. That's how they are. Now we've been conditioned to accept a certain amount of that, some people more than others, but no toddler ever wants to be told what to do. And so that is an innate part of the process. So like the autonomy, the freedom of speech, the right to make your own choices, you and I would be dying on those hills together if it came down to brass tacks.
And I think that that's an important part of this show, is to allow people to know that there is a bigger meaning out there in the medical world, and that, if we don't tell them the truth about chiropractic, someone else, like we were talking about sales and marketing earlier, someone else will market to them and they'll sell them into drugs and surgery. Like if we don't continuously tell the truth about this profession, to what it can do for people, their neighbors, cousins, uncles, coworkers going to tell them that they're quacks and that they hurt people and that you shouldn't do that.
Right. Well, and when I'm speaking with clients, I have to be honest with them and tell them, listen, either you're marketing or not, but your competition is. And McDonald's sells more burgers and fries every single year, not because they have a great product. They serve grade F meat and chemical fries, but more people buy that than any other burger fry combination because it's available and because people know about it. And so I see it as, if you really, really believe in what you do, it is your responsibility to tell people about it. It's your responsibility to market yourself well if you truly believe in what you're doing. And if you don't believe in it enough to market yourself, then maybe we pick something else. Maybe we think about whether or not that's really an authentic fit for you, and maybe career change is necessary. I'm not sure which one, but either way, we're going to come to a conclusion.
Yeah, and the marketing part of chiropractic is vital. I actually had Grant Cardone on our show a couple years ago, and he told me that best known businesses beat best every day.
Yes.
So that's your example of, the McDonald's thing. Best known will beat best every day. Like the guy with a restaurant down the street from your house that's like an awesome restaurateur, they probably have a great burger,
Oh,
but
sure.
they're selling 10 of them a day.
Mm-hmm.
Like a drive-through order at one of these companies, like they
10
sell
an hour is not enough.
they sell 10 in a minute.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because they've become such a great powerhouse because of marketing, it's not because the product's any better.
Now, it is easier to market with a good product,
It is.
but it's not required, unfortunately. And you could make the same argument for the pharmaceutical industry, where every other commercial on TV has something to do with, are you depressed? Do you need to be taking X, Y, or Z? All of these things, they're really, really good at marketing solutions. Now, is it the best solution that's available? Well, maybe not. In my opinion, probably not. But they get the attention. Attention is everything to a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and talking about that, like the pharmaceutical companies is, I think that they play an important role, like part of marketing, because it turns people off. Most people, it turns people off, and I'll just tell you, like I've never met anyone that took more drugs that had a better quality of life.
I know.
They never had more vitality. They couldn't go hike a mountain as fast as me. They couldn't recover as quick as somebody that doesn't pump themselves full of that crap.
Right.
Like, I just think that quality of life is a quotient that most people are missing out on. They think, do I have money, or do I have enough money, or do I have not enough money? And then they miss the mark when it comes to anything with self-responsibility of health.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So chiropractic, I love this topic, and I think I could talk about it for like 3 straight days on end, is like people talking about their life around chiropractic. And I know earlier we were off camera and you were talking to me about how chiropractic came into your life.
Mhm.
But sometimes people might not get a chance to hear these stories from us. So how did chiropractic come into your life?
Yeah, so my dad had been going to a chiropractor since his youth. He was heavily involved in sports in high school, swimming, skiing. He's from Evergreen, Colorado, and so there's a lot of outdoors in general. And I don't know how he was originally introduced to chiropractic, but I know that it was at a very young age for him. It was just something he had always done. And so even as a child, I remember being 4 or 5 years old and sitting out in the little waiting room, my feet like dangling in the little waiting chairs while my dad's getting adjusted. Now, he didn't have the foresight to think about whether or not we as kids should be, but I was in a series of accidents as an early adult, of 5 car accidents in 3 years, and I didn't want to go through surgery. So, because I had been through surgery for a sports injury before, and it had always just like caused me incredible problems. I've got 2 plates and 12 screws holding one of my arms together, and it's not even at the joint. And the problems that I was facing after these car accidents were in my hips. So I got hit from the driver's side, and it caused me to impact into the seat belt and the center console. So the seat belt being a large obstruction, and then the center console itself. So it wasn't even like I was slammed into an even surface, it was uneven. And it caused this like pelvic tilt. And then in and amongst there, I had to go back to work 3 days after having a baby, or lose my job in the largest economic downturn that I had ever lived in up until that point. And so I couldn't afford to not lose my job. So that's why I went back to work 3 days after having a baby. And I sat in an office chair for 10 hours a day in 3 days, starting 3 days after having a baby. So like nothing was back where it should have been. That's a story for a different time, but none of it was back where it should have been. So I had this kind of like repetitive and persistent interruption to how my pelvis should be place, and it caused, problems up and down. It's like halfway between. You got problems up your spine, you got problems down your legs and through your toes. And so compound all of that together. And my doctor's like, yeah, you're probably going to have some kind of surgery. I'm really not doing that again. So I did a lot of research, and I was already familiar with chiropractic because of my dad. So I went to the best chiropractor that I could find in my area and paid him a very good amount of money to make sure that I wasn't under the knife. And if you ask my doctors, they would say, well, if that helped, you probably weren't going to end up under the knife anyway. I'm like, well, maybe yes, maybe no. But at least for me, that was the solution that I wanted, because I didn't want to fix a symptom. I wanted to fix a problem.
Yeah. And what you're talking about is biomechanics. You're talking about postural distortions. You're talking about posture. And there's a little like phrase that I like to tell people is you either pay for your health now or you'll pay for sickness later.
Yeah.
And when a chiropractor comes to you and they present like a plan for you, like it's wise to follow their recommendations because they want to save you from a future of discomfort and symptomatology that just constantly shows up and repeats itself in the course of your life. And I think back to it again, if we focus more on quality of life quotient rather than am I a good earner and do I have enough money and can I afford these things, your body is the number one thing that you will ever have possession of.
Yes.
And it's your number one tool. It's your number one asset. And, I think that we all want to have a better quality long-term of life and, having, mobility and not be limited and having less postural distortions and more ability to do the things that we love to do. I think it's really important. So biomechanically, that's why chiropractic worked for you.
And I'm not a golfer. I'm a really good top golfer, but Rory explained it to me this way. He's like, okay, if you're a fraction off at the tee, that's going to be meters down the green. And so if you have this problem now, when you're 86, you're going to be hunched over and not able to move, and you're going to be using a walker. And so we either fix this now, where it's a very minor adjustment for a small period of time and then, regular maintenance because life, or you're going to be either really bad off and you have no solution at that point because you've lost, now your bones are brittle, you're frail, you have all of these other compounding challenges. So we're either going to fix it now or you're going to be really up the creek without a paddle later. And I understood that. It makes sense. And I've always been the kind of person where I don't necessarily want to solve for symptoms. I want to solve for the problem. So that I don't have to worry about the symptoms popping back up again later. I'm not super into chronic solutions.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Transact Card, Align Life, Neuro Infinity, Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, and the IFCO. Let's hustle. Yeah, and I think on the other side of it is, another easy thing to say to people is chiropractic gives you years to your life and life to your years. And
Yeah.
it's a really balanced out approach, marketing once again. If you say things the right way and people understand them the right way, it's easier for them to assimilate and say, I like that. I want that too. And, one of my good buddies, Gordon Hay, he started an insole company. He'd probably choke me if I told you he had insoles, but they're called A-Line.
Okay.
And he's like, I want to be walking my dog when I'm 80 and not a cane.
Yeah.
And I think that always it's kind of haunting. You think about it. I want to walk a dog when I'm 80 and not my cane. Like, yeah, I want you all to walk your dogs when you're 80 and not your canes.
Right.
And I think that it's really like powerful for people to think about because it paints a picture for them.
Absolutely. And I think the approach is everything. I think we can agree. This is something I talk about with my marketing clients all the time, is the approach is everything. And that is really the art and the science of marketing. Is I explain it like this: if you're down at like your local watering hole, and I don't mean where you water yourself, but like a pond, a lake, or a body of water, and I just want you to imagine there are ducks hanging around there. And I used to tell this story with bread as an example, but so many people would argue with me that bread isn't good for ducks. So now I just say duck food. Okay, so we're going to pretend that you have duck food in your hand. If you chase the ducks, what are they going to do?
They're going to run from
They're
you.
going to run away, right? So what you had in your hand, being good or bad for them, has absolutely no bearing to their behavior. Whereas if you just like sprinkle a little bit of duck food from the edge of the pond up to a bench and you sit there with your hand open, you're going to have every duck and chickadee and I don't know what else is, probably a chipmunk and a squirrel or two eating out of your lap by the time that it's all said and done. And I think, to your point, like the approach is everything. We have to be able to, marketing is the ability to say things in a way that people understand that you're the solution to a problem that they're having, right? I think we could all agree as business owners, we're not interested in taking money from people who don't actually have a problem that we could solve. I don't think anyone's really interested in that. That's just not good business, and that there's really no integrity in taking money from people who didn't actually have a problem that you could solve. And that's what I love about marketing, is that it's just how you inform everybody. So instead of trying to convince people that they should be working with you, you give them all the things that they need to decide to work with you instead of the other way around.
Yeah, one of my friends, Roberto Monaco, always tell me, speak not to just inform, but speak to transform. And I think that that's a really good takeaway. It's very measured once again. And that's the thing I like about being the interviewer on this side, is I get a chance to like listen and like interact with like the message that you just shared with me. And then I can send it away with a nice little like, message to people that they can be like, oh yeah, I remember he said, take my pen and paper out at the beginning of this interview. You might want to write a few things down. So whether it's coming from you or from me, I think that's a really good approach for people to like be interactive with a podcast or be interactive with information. Is I don't ever want people to just use our content as like in through one ear and out the other. I want them to actually be able to like meet somebody that they never met before. And I want them to be able to like get information from somebody that they wouldn't have found it from anywhere else before, the way that we are able to produce it. So I think it's just really cool that you're sharing some stuff about marketing. I know that metrics matter. And I think it'll be fun for you to explain to people like your perspective on metrics and what matters to people when they're actually building a brand.
Yeah, so I have a long-term vision when it comes to anything. I'm always there's a children's book I think that probably most people are familiar with, but it's The Tortoise and the Hare, and I always related to the tortoise more than I did the hare. I was never the fastest, I was never the best at anything, never did any of this, but I tend to think very pragmatically 10, 20, 30, 40 steps ahead. And I'm a very consistent person, even if I'm not a very fast person all of the time, but I'm very consistent. And there is one metric that I use for my business, and I encourage all of my clients to adopt this same thing, because it's something that's it's 100% within your control. And it will drive any other metric that you want to grow. And it's, do more people know that I'm in business today versus yesterday? That is the only metric that I focus on. Do more people know that I'm in business today versus yesterday? And it's that McDonald's perspective, if I plan to be in business for 40 years, which I'd like to, I love what I do, I'm good at it, and it fills my bucket, it brings me joy, it makes me feel like I'm having a positive impact on my community and the world at large. So for all of those reasons, I'd like to be in business for 40 years. Well, if just one new person knew that I was in business every single day for 40 years, I'd have an empire.
I
And
really
that's
like
what I mean
that.
when and so this is actually something that I adopted. Who was it? Nick Saban. I think he wrote a book called The Score Takes Care of Itself. And if it wasn't him, maybe it wasn't him. Gosh, somebody wrote a book called The Score Takes Care of Itself. And it's a sports. All of my analogies have to do with like sports or food. Usually that's just how I roll. But the point of the book, the major point was that if you focus on the small things, the score takes care of itself. So if you can focus on the fundamentals, the seemingly insignificant, boring, repetitive things, if you can focus on the little details, the score takes care of itself, right? And so that's how I approach marketing is if more people know that you're in business, you will do more business eventually. And if
Yeah.
you just focus on that one thing, the money will take care of itself. The recognition, if you're into that, being recognized, if you're part of a professional organization and you like being recognized by a group of your peers, if you want to be able to franchise, or if you want to be a coach, or if you any of these other things are all going to be worked out through the number of people that know that you're in business.
Well, you bring up a lot of ideas for me when it comes to like this number one metric, which
Mhm.
is have more people know about your business today than they did yesterday.
Yeah.
What are some solutions that people can do to like start making an impact by becoming more well known and being in front of more people's eyes and being in more people's scrolls? Because that's the world we live in today.
Yeah, that is the world that we live in today. So I have a couple of ways if somebody is not used to doing this, and then there are some kind of like more advanced things to do. So the easiest way to get in front of more eyes is to join local community Facebook groups that you happen to be interested in. Like, don't just join groups because it has a lot of people, because you're not going to interact. It's not going to be enjoyable. That's not your tribe, most likely. But there are groups right now for whatever you love. If it's chiropractic, or if it's pickleball, or if it's, I don't know what it happens to be that you love, bird watching. There is a group with at least 2,000 or 3,000 people on Facebook right now with that. And the two questions people love to ask: what's your name? What do you do? Those are the two first questions that people are going to ask. And so when you're new to a group, you just introduce yourself. Hi, I'm so and so. And they're going to say, hi, so and so. When did you start playing pickleball? And what do you do? They just are naturally going to ask those questions. So then you can tell them about what you're doing. A more advanced version of that thing is creating a community Facebook group where you're running it. And it's for, especially if you're a brick and mortar place, this is great. If you go to a coffee shop on a regular basis, take pictures of the coffee shop, post it in this group. And then when people say, oh, I'm looking for a great coffee shop, I know, you know what? Jim is always at these coffee shops and always posting about them. I should ask him if he knows any good ones. And then it's going to start a conversation. And when people think about you as the center point or as a fixture in this community, they're going to come to ask for your advice about a lot of different things, whether that be what you do professionally or another profession. You can start passing referrals that way to any of your really great other community members. And the more referrals you pass, the more the law of reciprocity is going to come into play, and they're going to want to send people your way. And you just make yourself top of mind. What I call this is being the mayor of the town. So you can borrow somebody else's town until you can become the mayor of your own. So that's kind of like the more advanced version of that. I love making video content. So I will record myself just going about my day to day. And usually it's with a cup of coffee in hand. I drink enough of that to kill a small horse most of the time. And I love it. Don't come for me. It makes my heart so happy. I'm Cuban. You cannot take coffee from the Cuban. But I have this mug, and I'll just record myself with the mug. and wherever I am, and I call them mug shots, and I put a little sound over it and an inspirational message, because I like that. It's fun, and I get interaction that way. So it doesn't always have to be about your business. It could just be about your life. In fact, it's better if it's about your life, because people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And they actually care a lot less about whether you are the premier promo, top of the line at everything that you do. They would rather take a top 20% professional, because that's good enough, that they like, than work with a top 1% of professional that they don't enjoy to spend time with.
Well, the takeaway here for everybody is be social on social.
Be social on social.
Be social in the groups that you join. Start your own. Curate those people, nurture those people, and take them on a journey with you.
Yes.
And I think that that's the really cool thing about today's conversation. I know we're coming up on the edge of our interview today, but are there things I didn't ask you that you wish I would have asked you today?
We covered so much, and I'm so excited about everything that we talked about. One thing that I will say is, this is a hot take, okay? Automation is going to be the way that people buy their life back. If we're talking about providing a bigger quality of life for professionals, artificial intelligence and automation is going to be one of the leading ways that small practices get to behave like big practices without having to work 80 hours a week, 380 days out of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Is through automation and artificial intelligence. And so if you're not really interested in learning about this, you should find somebody who is interested in learning about this and get their advice about how you could put this to work inside of your business sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And, my follow up on that once again is, if you do have a list and you are staying in touch with people and it is automated, I found this to be true too, that if people get tired of the message of automation that you've created, if it's a content like strategy map that you have with either, follow-up messages or follow-up emails, if a person opts out or unsubscribes, don't take it personal. They're not your ideal client or customer, and they're not going to buy from you anyways. So in the marketing world, you can't let your ego get involved with somebody's wanting to move away from your messaging either. And I found that that's a lot of times people too. They'll see, like, because you'll see when somebody unsubscribes from you,
Yeah.
that you get notified. You're like, oh, wow, he doesn't want my stuff anymore. She doesn't want my stuff anymore. Don't take it personal. Just know that people only have so much bandwidth for so much messaging during their time and day, and everybody's vying for their attention. So if you are chosen and 99% of your list is still intact, or 99.9% of your list is still intact on a day-to-day basis, that means you're doing something right. And you're actually adding a lot of value to people. But I think that sometimes people let their ego get involved with becoming a marketer, that somebody will make a bad comment to them, they take it personal. Somebody will do something to them on a social platform where they take it personal. And I think through marketing, you just have to realize that you're out there in an arena with so many people with their own thoughts, with their own opinions, with their own ideas that might not mesh with yours. And sometimes there's a clash there. Number one thing to take away from all this, don't take it personal. It's somebody else that's having a projection of their thoughts, feelings, and ideas upon something that you are doing on automation. So if it is an automated type, strategy where you're posting content, like, you can't let your ego get dumped on because somebody decides to say something that you didn't like.
Yeah, well, and I think to your point, it's a couple of things that came to mind based on what you said, and I'm in total agreement. And it comes back to that autonomy thing, right? Which is, if someone didn't have the ability to unsubscribe from you because they have a difference of opinion, you wouldn't be able to do that either, right? It's a two-way street, that thing. And so we're not going to work with everybody, but the thing, you don't want to work with everybody either. Right? You reserve the right to say something about you aggravates my values and I'd rather not participate in this thing called life with you. Well, they get to do the same thing, right? And the automation, what it really represents, and maybe I'll put a pin in that, maybe we come back to it, but I like my life to be predictable as far as the results that I'm getting from my business. So that means that I don't run my business like a sitcom where it's a new episode every single week. It's like a movie. I want to know that it's going to be a happily ever after at the end. So I built the system that, goes from people being aware of my business through investigating whether or not I'm going to be a good solution for the problems that they're facing, all the way to the buy-in stage and into the advocacy end. I want to know that all of that is going to end up one way, not 10 seasons worth of episodes kind of way. So when I built these systems, this is what I want. And just some movies aren't for everybody, right? And don't change it up just because one person or 10 people didn't like it, especially if you've done a really good job of putting in the work on the front end to create a brand and to create content that is authentic to you. Don't change it up just because it didn't land with somebody else. It's going to land with the right people, but the most important person that it needs to land with is you. Otherwise, you're going to burn out in your own business, and at that point you've created a 9-to-5 for yourself again. And I don't think that anyone took the risk to go into business for themselves to live with the crap that people who have 9-to-5s have to live with.
Well, one of my mentors once told me, don't give yourself a job that sucks.
Yeah.
And I think that that's another takeaway for people out there that are watching it to the tail end of this episode is be social on social and don't give yourself a job that sucks.
Yep.
And find more people to get in front of on a day-to-day basis, and you'll find more fulfillment and you'll attract the right people. And just stay consistent with it. Do it for you and do it for a larger audience, do it for a larger community, build your community, and get into those groups and start to become familiar and friendly with people. And you'll see how your business grows too. And if people wanted to work with you, Kristina, or if they wanted to learn more about you, where can we send them to?
Yeah. So if they want to be entertained, they can go to TikTok @_theprettypenny. If they want to work with me, Facebook is a good place to find me, or I'll give you my email. I'm not going to tell you where all the dashes and dots and slashes go, but attached to this episode somewhere in the caption or the description, we'll make sure that my email gets available to anybody who's looking to increase their visibility by being authentic and get better results while working less.
I love it. Well, Kristina, thanks for being our guest today. You were episode 509 of the Chiro Hustle podcast.
Love it.
Well,
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. And just like all episodes, I just let everybody know you're just one story away. Keep hustling. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.